Perfect.
Refuge is a safe place. Hold on, stop.
Sorry.
Okay.
Where do I look?
Eyes, is it okay if I look there?
Fine.
Okay.
Explore
Explore.
their faith in Jesus.
Mouth it for me, okay?
Go.
Refuge is a safe place for people to, no.
That's not it. You ready?
Safe place is a,
Refuge is a safe place for all people.
Refuge is a safe place for all people.
Refuge is a safe place for all people to explore.
Why can't I remember?
All people.
Well, to restore and explore their faith in Jesus and his church.
Refuge is a safe place for all people to explore and restore their faith in Jesus.
And his church.
Huh?
And his church.
And his church.
There we go. This is good. Okay.
All right. Action.
Refuge is a safe place for all people to explore and restore their faith in Jesus and his church.
All right, so I hope you guys remember it because I'm going to start walking around with a camera and redoing it because I need to remake those. So I hope you remember that Refuge is a safe place for all people to explore and restore their faith in Jesus and his church. My name is Nicole. I am one of the pastors here at Refuge, and I just want to thank everyone for coming out in the rain tonight. I know it is not fun to drive in the rain in Florida, so thank you for making time to be here with me tonight. So we're going to start with Galatians 5, verses 16 through 23, and Paul writes, "Live by the Spirit, I say. Do not gratify the desires of the flesh, for what the flesh desires is opposed to the Spirit, and what the Spirit desires is opposed to the flesh. Now the works of the flesh are obvious: sexual immorality, impurity, debauchery, idolatry, sorcery." Does someone know that word? Enmities, anemones. I probably should have tried to say all these words first. Strife, jealousy, anger, quarrels, dissensions, factions, envy, drunkenness, carousing, and things like these. By contrast, the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, generosity, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. There is no law against such things. Of all the things in my life that I thought that I would be, a parent, honestly, was at the bottom of the list. Not because I didn't want kids and not because I didn't want to be a parent. It's just that it never felt like something that would be possible. So I kind of suppressed those desires and didn't really think about it a whole lot. And for those of you who don't know, Elijah is not biologically mine, but in every other way a kid can be related to me, he is mine. So much so that I've actually been told that he looks like me. Annika hates that. But I have been told that. And before he came into my life, like I said, I didn't give a lot of thought into being a parent. However, I did think a lot about how to be a parent, because nobody is more judgmental or knows how to do things better as a parent than the childless. Am I right? Yeah. There are countless times in Walmart where I would hear a screaming, begging, angry child and just think, my child would never. Yeah. I don't know if I'm allowed to preach karma from the platform, but like I say in my house, karma is a snitch. So, yeah, so like I did that. If I was that kid's parent, and I'm pretty sure now I am the parent who receives those judgmental side-eye comments from the childless. And I actually remember one time I got it. We were in Target, and he likes to ride on the back of the cart, which for me is not a big deal. As long as, and I tell him, as long as there's stuff in the cart to balance out your weight, because it's going to fall and you're going to get hurt. So he tried to get on it, and I said, don't stand on it yet. There's nothing in it. You're going to fall and get hurt. Not while it's empty. And of course, no, I won't. No, I won't. Because he knows everything. And he says it, I know everything. And I'm like, you're going to get hurt. No, I won't. No, I won't. No, blah, blah, blah. We did this. I went back and forth more than I want to be honest with about. And finally, I was like, you know what? Whatever. Get on the back of the cart. If you get hurt, I don't know what to tell you. And so we're going down an aisle. I let my hands off the cart. And of course, because I am the grown-up, what I predicted was going to happen happens. I let go of the cart goes up, his Crocs get stuck in the cart, and he gets hurt, and his foot gets twisted, and he falls to the ground. And you would think that as a good parent, I'd be like, oh my God, are you okay? all the side eye, because it made a loud noise. It went up on 2 wheels and then back down on 2 wheels. So immediately everybody within like an earshot is staring at me at how I'm going to handle the situation. And of course, I said, I told you that would happen. Now, if you would just listen to me and stand up and walk like a human being. And he said, can you pick me up? I said, no, let's go. Look, I'm not a great parent. I'm okay. He's alive and has all his fingers and his toes, so it's a win. But I learned from the best, yes. I say, oh, that's my mom. She said that. So I say all that to bring up this idea that has been around for a long time, but in recent years has kind of made its way into the mainstream, is gentle parenting. And despite the story that I just told you, I do try really hard to be a gentle parent. I try to exercise tactics and ways to communicate with Elijah that is aligned with gentle parenting. And I do a really good job when he's at school. And so, and to a lot of people, this looks like a hippy-dippy, anti-discipline way of parenting, but it's not about avoiding discipline or allowing your kids to exercise just an excessive amount of freedom to do whatever they want to do. It's about teaching and shaping your kids with patience and kindness and understanding and ultimately gentleness. And it is not easy. I think about the story I told you, and I could point out many, many spots in that story where I could have handled things differently. I could have spoken to him in a much gentler way, but I didn't. But we all learn, we grow, whatever. But the goal with gentle parenting is not behavior manipulation, it's behavior modification. Modeling self-control, modeling respect and gentleness for your child. And he's been a little feisty lately. He's made it really hard to gentle parent him. He's been a little bit more impatient, a little more irritable, a little more short-tempered. And it wasn't until that he gave me a look that I give him when I get frustrated with him, just like, and he looked just like me. He did when he just hit me with that. It was when I realized that for him, I've been modeling more irritability, more impatience. I've been more short-tempered. I haven't been in the most control of my emotions. So for him, I've been modeling demands instead of requests. I've been not using my manners, getting impatient or frustrated, snapping at him. So Anik and I talked, and we recalibrated. And we've been a little bit more intentional about keeping our tones level and mellow, approaching situations with gentleness. And within like a day or so did he. He started modeling back the behaviors that we started modeling for him. Because I'm a living, learning, growing person, and I'm trying to make sense of a very chaotic and a very confusing world. But I've been doing it for 36 years. I know I don't look 36. But my 5-year-old, he's not a tiny, mini human adult. He is a human sometimes. But just like me, he's a human being learning to live, learning to make sense of this very same world that I'm living in. And he's only been doing it for 5. And as his parent and as the adult and the mature one, most of the time it is my responsibility to model for him to the best of my ability how to live and respond to all of the thoughts, feelings, and emotions that we have to sort through in a very crazy and chaotic world. Also, Inside Out is helping a lot. If I can be gentle with him, he's gentle with me, and we can be gentle with people around us in the world. And I think something that we can look at gentle parenting and say, and say that it is weak or it's passive. But gentleness is not weakness. Gentleness is not passivity. Gentle parenting is very hard. If you are a parent and if you have tried to be gentle with a toddler or a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old, it is very, very difficult. I thought I'd at least get one amen from one parent in the room. Because if you've got it nailed, just teach me your ways, Sensei, because I don't. Sometimes I sound gentle or I'm speaking gentle words, but it's through gritted teeth. And just listen to me. I'm not going to complain about my son anymore. I love him to death. He's a good kid. But gentleness is not weakness. It's not passivity. Gentleness is power that is under control. Being gentle with my son is about knowing that I have the power, the strength, and the ability to harm him verbally or physically, but being strong enough, being gentle enough to be able to respect his dignity and honor that his value that he has even as a 5-year-old. Gentleness is controlled strength. Gentleness is having power, yet choosing to exercise it with humility and restraint. Gentleness is an intentional choice to be calm and exercise grace. Gentleness is patience response. When patience remains silent and does not retaliate, it does not seek revenge. Gentleness is the loving and humble Christ-like way to respond. Last week we talked about patience being the ability to endure difficult people or difficult situations without letting anger or frustration control or dictate how we respond. And then 2 days later, I'm giving a tour of this beautiful facility to a pastor interested in sharing space with us. And standing right here on this platform, he asked me how I can have peace in a same-sex relationship, even though God says in his word it's a sin, with my wife in the room. But I acted with patience and gentleness. You know, when they say when you pray for patience, God's not going to give you patience. He's going to give you situations that make you patient and gentle. That was one of them. But I feel like I did a good job. Annika said I did a good job. But it was a true test of both my patience, my gentleness. I actually had a civil conversation. He didn't attack me. He didn't condemn me. But we were able to have a discussion about it because my response to something that made my blood boil was patience and understanding and gentleness. And real quick, I want to jump back to Galatians 5 that we opened with. I used the NRSV tonight, which is why I stumbled over anemones. It's a New Revised Standard Version. It's a highly respected version of the Bible. If you would like an English translation that gets as close to the original text as we can, the NRSV is a really good one. And Galatians 5:17 in the NRSV says, "For what the flesh desires is opposed to the spirit, and what the spirit desires is opposed to the flesh." If you were to read it in one of another translations, one of my favorite is the New Living Translation. It says things like sinful nature or controlled by sin. And I don't know about you, I'm speaking from my own experience when I say this, is that when I was taught in youth group and stuff, is that I was taught that I was inherently sinful, that I was evil. And then anything that I wanted to do, anything that Nicole wanted to do was also sinful. Therefore, what Nicole wants is a sin and it's evil. Even something as trivial as watching Netflix instead of reading my Bible, or crocheting instead of reading my Bible. I was giving into the flesh. I was weak. And as a pastor and a teacher, I could easily thread that needle. We can use Galatians 5:16 and 17 for behavior manipulation. And I'm not saying it's been done, but I'm also not saying that it's not been done, if you know what I mean. Because in the New Living Translation, like I said, it says, when you follow your sinful desires, your sinful nature, the results are clear. Have you heard this message before? Have you heard things said like this from the pulpit and small groups and youth groups? If you grew up in church, you are inherently sinful. At the core of who you are a lying, cheating, fornicating piece of trash. Just me, or is anybody in the room? I'm not all those things. I'm just saying I've been told that I'm not those things. I've been told I'm those things. I'm adding some sarcasm to them, but I'm not far off from what things get taught, especially with this verse. All the gentle parents in the room are making a swift exit. Don't worry, my wife, she is an RBT, so she does have some sort of, it doesn't sound like she has control, but she's got it. Anyways. Thank you to all the parents who stepped out. But like I said, I'm adding a little sarcasm and humor to it. And I'm not here to split hairs on what is and isn't sin. I'm not here to tell you exactly what is sin. I'm here to put some context in front of you of the scripture so you can decide what you think. You can decide what it is that you believe, because your sin, your temptations, your hang-ups, your vices, they're different than mine. the guy that asked me if I had peace, he was like, I can't just be a fornicator even though I want to be. I was like, dude, that sounds like a you thing. Let me show you how to lock up. So like his sin is different than my sin. And so I used the NRSV tonight for one specific word, and that was flesh. And I did have a joke in here about the fruit of the Spirit being flesh because it's October and Halloween, but I thought it was too much. Yeah, by your response, it was too much. I'm glad I left it out and didn't say it. For what the flesh desires is opposed to the Spirit, and what the Spirit desires is opposed to the flesh. And in this context, Paul is talking about our human nature. Yes, our human nature does oppose the Spirit, but it's not because we're inherently evil or we're inherently sinful or we're bad people straight out of the gate. Just me being naturally Nicole does not make me a sinful, evil person. What does make us sinful? What is it about our human nature, about my human nature, that can push me to do sinful things? Human beings by nature, like I said, I do not believe are born inherently bad or sinful. But human beings are prone to being self-centered. An inward and selfish focus is what pushes us into conflict and opposition and can push us into eventual sin. So let's look again at what Paul says in Galatians. Do not gratify the desires of the flesh. Your selfish, self-centered desires. Do not gratify those. Because the works of the flesh are obvious. When you are selfish, it is obvious. Sexual immorality, impurity, debauchery, idolatry, sorcery, strife, jealousy, anger, quarrels, dissensions, factions, envy, drunkenness, carousings, and things like these. In reading this list of sins, it's not hard to infer that our flesh and our human nature are just as evil. But our flesh, our human nature, who we are as a person, is not inherently sexually immoral, impure, or hateful, anger, or jealous, but these are behaviors that are manifestations of our selfishness. All of these things are the fruit of what happens when we place our personal desires, we place our own satisfaction, even our own control above others. Yes, from sexual immorality to idolatry, anger, jealousy, all of these are products of living for ourselves and prioritizing our wants, our needs, our desires above the well-beings of other people. And this is not the fruit of love that we have been called to, because the fruit of love that we have been called to produces gentleness. So last week I complained about how TV networks were only releasing one episode at a time, and then I told you I was giving you another to be continued. So last week, when we last left Paul, he had been falsely accused of breaking Jewish law. He had been attacked, beaten, arrested, and even in the face of unjust and unfair treatment, he remained silent. He didn't retaliate. He didn't seek revenge. He just kept his mouth shut. He didn't throw punches. He didn't try to defend himself. All that he does is he simply asks to address the crazy, angry, violent mob that was trying to kill him. And at the end of Acts 21, he speaks to the crowd in their own native language, displaying his humility and displaying his patience. And in part 2 tonight, we find out what he says. Acts 22, verses 1 through 2 says, "Brothers and esteemed fathers," Paul said, "listen to me as I offer my defense." And when they heard him speaking in their own language, their silence was even greater. Esteemed fathers. Honestly, if it were me, I would have dressed them a little bit differently. Probably rhymes more with like brother truckers. But instead, he calls them brothers and esteemed fathers. Why is this important? It's important because he has just shown admiration and respect to people trying to kill him. He's not just being polite to try to get them to stop trying to kill him. He's taking a posture of humility in front of his accusers. in front of the brother truckers who were whooping his butt just like 3 minutes ago. He's showing them that he's not their enemy, but he honors them. He respects them. He values them. He respects their beliefs, their authority. Paul is exhibiting strength under control. And Paul has every reason to be defensive. Paul has every reason to argue and to fight back. Retaliation, I feel, in this moment would be justified. Retaliation in the face of injustice feels justified, but instead, he gently approaches them. He speaks clearly and calmly, choosing not to react emotionally or violently. He says, listen to me as I offer my defense. This is an invitation, not a demand. He's not saying, shut up and listen and let me tell you why I'm right and you're wrong and what you're doing is crazy. He invites them to have a discussion, not a debate, not to argue about why the law is invalid, why he didn't need to follow the law. He's wanting to talk and discuss and not display his power. In defense, we hear he wants to offer his defense, and it can often suggest that he's being assertive or aggressive with what we know in our context. But the word that he uses in the original language actually implies he's offering a thought-out, calm, gentle explanation. And Paul's response is not about Paul. Paul makes it about his accusers, and we see that even in the way that he's speaking to them by calling them brothers and esteemed fathers. We see that in the language he chose to speak to them. He's showing that he's concerned about their well-being, concerned about making sure that they still feel honored and valued and respected, even though they probably don't deserve it because of the things that they've done, because of the way that he's treated them. Paul's response in Acts 22, verses 1 and 2, is a model of true gentleness, a gentleness that is not passive, but that is led by the Spirit, that is led by the fruit of the Spirit, which is love, which is the way that we are also to confront hostility. Paul exemplifies for us a way to seek understanding and to build bridges between the people, between the divide that separates us from people. Refuge is a safe place for all people. And being a safe place is more than just offering a place for the LGBTQ community to worship. That is a part of it and is important, yes. Being a safe place is more than just celebrating Juneteenth with a service to honor Juneteenth. It is a part of it, yes. It even is more than just showing dignity and respect to all people who come into this building. And these are major tenets of our values here, so don't get me wrong. But being a safe place also includes how our fruit is being seen and represented in our community. Being a safe and gentle place for all people means putting the needs of others above our own, using our gentleness to do things like disarm hostility, especially when it's aimed at our brothers and sisters and friends in marginalized communities. Being gentle is not about avoiding the difficult truths, but about finding ways to talk about these difficult things in patience and in gentleness, talking about the discrimination that still happens, about the racism that still exists, the inequality that still exists, talking about the people that it affects. And the faith that I have deconstructed was a very inward-focused, self-centered faith. I made a lot of things about me and my religion and about always being right. I spoke about the flesh tonight, not to point out how sinful we can be, but how selfish we can be. How much and how easy it is for us to make things about ourselves. How often we lean towards putting our needs above the needs of other people. And I wanted to wrap up this sermon tonight with how Refuge can use our gentleness, our patience, our love, the acts of the Spirit that we're learning about in this series, using that in our privilege to stand for social justice, to really stand with marginalized communities. And as much as I made it fit and as beautiful and as poignant and powerful as it could have been, I stopped myself, not because I don't think it's important, because it is, but I just kept coming back to Jesus. I kept coming back to Jesus. Elijah's school was showing The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe last night for free. They were inviting families and stuff, like a little family night, to come out and watch the movie. And Annika made like a little joke. She's like, the spiritual whatever in this movie. And she chuckled. I was like, yeah. I was like, it's about Jesus, babe. Like, it's so good. Aslan is Jesus. Did everybody know that? Or did I spoil anything for anybody? If I did, I'm so sorry. Where have you been? But anybody seen this movie, read the book? All right. The movie's so good. Go watch the movie. It's really good. But the Aslan scene, man, when, spoiler alert, Aslan gets killed. He gets executed. And that scene in this movie is like so intense. It's so emotional. And I cry every time. It's a sacrifice. And it's Jesus, man. It's Jesus. It's obviously Jesus. But I cry when I watch that scene. In fact, any scene that depicts the crucifixion, I cry. Watching the sacrifice that was made, the life that was taken, I cry. I get a little emotional. And as a kid, when I would think about Jesus, I thought Jesus was amazing because he never sinned. He never said a cuss word when he hit his thumb with a hammer. He never cheated on a test, never disrespected his mom, never lied to his mom, never mumbled under his breath when she asked him to go clean his room. He never stole anything. He never punched anyone in the throat despite how much they deserved it. He never flicked anyone off in traffic. He never threw a Monopoly board across the room. He never parked his donkey in a no parking zone. He never drank wine straight from the jug. Never gossiped, never left anybody out. All the silly and major things that we've been shamed through all the years. Jesus never did those things. And the more that I've thought about that, like really thought about it, not saying the F word, not lying, not cheating, those things are not really that impressive. I've been speaking for 23 minutes and I haven't said the F word once. It's not really that impressive. And I know there's a silent hush has fallen across the room because she's about to say Jesus is not impressive. That's not true. The impressive part is that Jesus being fully human. We believe at Refuge that Jesus was fully God and fully man. It wasn't impressive that he didn't say the F word when he stubbed his toe. What was impressive is that through his whole life, Jesus remained selfless. Jesus was not selfish. That's a whole different thing. Jesus never sinned, not to show off his superpower or to show us how awesome and quite literally the best he was. Jesus never sinned because Jesus was never selfish. There was never a moment where Jesus put his needs, his wants, his desires over the needs of anybody else. Time and time again in Scripture, we see Jesus, the King of the universe, the creator of heaven and earth, putting the needs of fishermen, tax collectors, carpenters, shepherds, lepers, Romans, Samaritans, Pharisees, priests, slaves, eunuch, women, and children. Jesus put the needs of white, black, gay, straight, trans, non-binary, unhoused, immigrant, refugee. The list goes on and on. Jesus put the needs of all people above his own. He wasn't selfish. And he remains selfless because he loves us. He wasn't selfish because his life was about people. His living, his life, his death, his resurrection was about all people. We were more important to Jesus than his own needs. And that's why when I see Aslan do the sacrifice and get executed, or I can't watch crucifixion scenes, because Jesus put my needs above his own. And it's easy to reduce gentleness to soft words and a quiet spirit. especially when you're talking about being Christ-like. But true gentleness, really, truly being gentle, allowing the fruit of love produce gentleness in our lives, is about the restraint of power, the restraint of control for the sake of other people. It's far more radical than just speaking softly or quietly. It's choosing not to assert your will or your will over anybody else's. And Jesus embodied this in the way that he lived and the way that he died. He could have called down angels to save him. He could have demanded worship. He could have demanded recognition because of who he was, but he never did that. Instead, he spent his whole life, his whole ministry, modeling the exact opposite. He remained gentle. He remained selfless in the face of injustice, in the face of hatred. And just like Paul in the story, Jesus was falsely accused by the religious. He was attacked, arrested, beaten, nailed to a cross, and he never stopped thinking about all people. So gentle and loving and selfless on the cross that he was forgiving of those who crucified him. And his gentleness wasn't just in the absence of harshness or revenge or retaliation. It was the presence and the product of selfless love. I come back to Jesus because no matter how essential and important advocacy is and social justice, if we lose sight of selflessness and selfless love and a sacrificial gentleness that puts other people, the needs of other people above our own, then we miss the point of the gospel. My faith and my belief system, it's no longer about correct beliefs or right behaviors or making sure everyone that I preach to believes the same way that I believe. My faith, my religion, my belief system, it's about people. It's about making sure people know they are loved and valued and honored, and they have a safe place here where they are loved and valued and honored. My ministry, my faith, my life, my belief system is about being gentle with people. Being more like Jesus means emptying ourselves. And I'm not gonna lie to you, I kind of cringed when I typed those words out into my service, because I've worked through a lot of religious trauma. You might not have, but I have. And I worked through a lot of religious trauma and therapy. And one thing that makes my skin still crawl is the way the church would preach this idea of dying to yourself. You die to everything you want, everything you think you need. And personally, my experience with this is that people would tell me that I needed to die to myself, and that meant dying to the spirit of homosexuality that was after me. Dying to my needs and desires to have a family, dying to the desires to be a parent. I had to die to my flesh so that I could live for Jesus. But dying to my flesh isn't about me not being Nicole, but instead it's about me being Nicole in every beautiful way that God intended me to be. Emptying myself isn't about emptying out the desires that I have, emptying out the hopes and the dreams that I have to sacrifice those for a life of service to Jesus. Emptying myself is about removing selfishness and replacing it with the selfless love that produces joy for others, that makes peace among all people, that is patient in difficult times and is gentle at heart. I'm going to ask the band to come up as we close tonight. Jesus says, "Let me teach you, because I am humble and gentle at heart." This is the kind of gentleness we are called to. Not to overpower, but to walk alongside others, to share their burdens, to honor them, to value them, to serve them, whatever that looks like. The emptying of ourselves is not about sacrificing who you are, but it's about being selfless, the same selfless love that allowed Jesus to forgive his accusers, that allowed Jesus to forgive the religious even as he hung on the cross. Like Jesus, I want us to be a safe place that loves, honors, and respects all people. So as we worship tonight, will you contemplate and meditate on what it means when we sing the song that says, "Yet not I, but through Christ in me"? How can I be more like Jesus? How can I be more selfless? Am I willing to embody this true sacrificial love for everyone I meet, to love them selflessly, to put their needs above my own? Would you stand and worship with us tonight?